Now turning to the Marriage of Figaro Overture, Köchel 492, written by Mozart in 1786 when he was 30 years old, so a much later piece in his output. Famously written a few hours before the first performance, the overture is a self-contained piece which doesn't quote any of the music from the actual opera itself, and it also ends on a very distinct series of D major chords. So the work is often performed as a piece in its own right. This is in direct contrast to the Don Giovanni Overture of the following year, 1787, which opens with the most important sequence of music from the whole opera, the reappearance of the Commendatore. That overture is also in D major but ends on a C major chord, which leaves you in a state of suspension and leads segue straight into the opening scene of the opera. However, the Figaro Overture does set the scene and character of the opera perfectly. As Herbert Glass says, the Figaro Overture gives us a delectable foretaste of the mood of its opera, fleet, witty and often acerbic in humour. The opening 8 bars are marked presto, very fast, pianissimo, and all the instruments play in unison, strings and bassoons together. They give the impression of people scurrying about, preparing for the wedding of Figaro and Susanna, and this is quite often in performances of the opera done in dumb show as the overture is played. Now, the addition of 2 bassoons to the string sound seems unusual, but Mozart often did this in his writing, giving the bassoons the cello bass line to play along with. He must have known that this would add a subtle extra timbre to the sound of the orchestra. And we can bear this in mind when we play, so not to try and play too ridiculously quietly. In fact, many of the most difficult sections for an orchestral bassoonist to play in Mozart's music are the double cello bass line. So, for example, in the overture, at bar 12, there are repeated quavers, which for the cello bass is quite easy. They bounce the bow on the string, but for the bassoonist it's much harder. You have to double tongue these sections. Quite an advanced technique, and something I probably won't be talking about in these videos. This extract, the opening extract, is famously difficult for all bassoonists and is always set for professional auditions. I'd just like to touch on the technical ways in which a bassoonist might tackle this excerpt. Firstly, play it slowly and quite loudly, and then increase your speed using a metronome and lessen your dynamic over time. I think evenness is the key to these fast quaver movements, and maybe you should take out some of the tonguing marks, so only tongue in bars 1, 2, 4 and 7, and don't breathe in the rest. When we see a rest, our instinct is to always take a breath in, but it's not necessary, and I think it will chop up the music too much. Don't clip the crotchets either in bar 1 and 3. Give them their full length, not a quaver. When I play this, I tend to put my crooklock on so I can move from D to C sharp and move my thumb up and down rather than side to side. And the last thing to say about this excerpt is that sometimes with quiet excerpts we use a special reed. I don't think that option is open to you to adapt a reed or use an old one, because there are very loud sections coming up in bar 12 and some solo passages later on. So use lots of rhythmic variation like we did in the concerto, and work slowly through it, gradually speeding it up over time. It never gets easy, but you will get better at playing it. Good luck.